I would like to start tonight by making reference to and providing a statement from the legendary Richard Russell, who I'm sure you remember very, very well. Who warned about the destruction of currencies and capitalism itself. I believe today his comments are so very relevant. He said, and I quote, "The end of capitalism will be due to the unbelievable amount of debt that is currently being created. This will create monster inflation that will destroy every currency. The only currency that cannot be destroyed is gold. When investors realize this, we will have the makings of the greatest bull market in gold ever seen. The trash of fiat money will disappear and silver and gold will take their rightful place in the world monetary system. As the old system is destroyed, a better and finer monetary system will grow out of the ashes." I believe he is right on the mark. Your thoughts, Egon?
Well, absolutely. It's very easy. Every single currency, as we know, in history has gone to zero. So we have these monetary cycles, and they last for 100 years, 200 years, depending on the time. But they always end, and they always end in the same way, with the money becoming worthless. And of course, the other side of that is that if money becomes worthless and we measure the gold price in worthless money, the gold price obviously becomes a very, very high price. So it really should look at purchasing terms rather than the price of gold measured in fiat money. I already back in the late 80s, early 90s, I came to the conclusion that we are now coming to the end of another monetary era, and that's why we studied carefully what and when that was likely to happen, and then we entered the gold market in 2002 at $300. We've seen gold go from $35 to $835 in 1971 to $850 in 1980, and then a long correction down to $250 in 99, 2000. As we know, that's when every single central bank in the world sold gold. Even the Swiss National Bank halved their holding, and of course Gordon Brown, the UK Chancellor of the Exchequer at the time, also sold the UK gold. So that was the bottom, a very good sign, and that after that we went into gold because we saw that we are going to see the end of this era, and we saw, just like Richard Russell said, we saw coming inflation and destruction of capital values, bubble markets coming, and gold reflecting all of this. I thought, of course, stock markets would crash a lot earlier. I thought the 2007-9 period was when the end of the era, but I was wrong. But luckily, gold saw something more than that. Gold continued to go up between the 300 where we bought it and where we are now, 3,400. I totally agree with Richard Russell. We haven't seen the beginning of the real bull market in gold yet. That's still to come. That will be obviously a collapse of the monetary system. As we know, the most currencies, dollar, euro, yen, etc., they're all down 99% since 1971, even since 1980, now we have the final 1%. But as I always stress, that 1% fall of the currencies is 100% from here, and this is what we're going to experience. And we have all the elements. That we have the debt, which is growing exponentially. We have the deficits, which are also growing exponentially. And then we have money printing in most countries, and also we have extremely poor political leadership in Europe and in the US and around the Western world. And that goes hand in hand with the end of an era. You get weak leadership. You need a really poor leader to take you down the last bit, and that's what we have. Trump is certainly doing all he can with totally now irrational decisions on a daily basis, and then getting more desperate because other pressures like the Epstein affair, etc. I think I'm sure Richard Russell is. I hope he's looking down from wherever he is, and because he wanted to experience this, and our dear friend and my friend also, Jim Sinclair, who was Mr. Gold, who died a year ago, also would have loved to see this because he saw it coming also. And I'm just lucky to still be alive. Intellectually, it'll be a very interesting period to watch this. But it will be, from a human point of view, it will be horrible. It will be absolutely horrible. We don't know exactly when it will start and how long it will be, but this is the time to be prepared for what's coming, in my view.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's amazing that, this has been going on, 100 years or thereabouts, changing of the baton. And as Alistair MacLeod said a couple of weeks ago when we interviewed him, an American dollar in 1971 is worth a cent today. How can governments and mainstream media do it that well that people haven't worked this out? Because we are really heading for disaster. It will be a disaster for the world. It will be fantastic for gold holders. Yeah. But I'm blown away by the fact that they have been so successful in keeping our eyes closed to what's really going on.
Well, I think they've developed the Department of Propaganda.
Absolutely, very good at it.
That's how they've done very well from it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You're right. It is amazing that politicians are not students of history, because if they were, they would see that this happens over and over again without fail. And you take, of course, politicians have to lie all the time. They don't want to see the truth, because the truth means that if they told the people what's going to happen, they won't be reelected. And if they want to come in from being on the opposition side of politics and want to come in, they also got to promise the earth and not say what they think, if they think that we could be facing more difficult times. But of course, politicians, they only think, as far as their nose goes, basically. And therefore, these long-term moves, that take somebody like Ray Dalio, he understood that what he actually decided to really understand what was happening and when, and through history, he could actually forecast exactly what's going to happen now, and anyone could take the time to study history, and it does repeat itself, and it does rhyme, and therefore, it's really so easy. And this is the same reason we went into gold. It is so clear, but nobody wants to believe it. And when you ever tell people, they just think you're a prophet of doom and gloom. And all you're talking about history and the further, I don't know who said that now. Was it Churchill or somebody said, the further you can look back, the more clear you are about the future. And that's really so simple. It's so simple. But still, sadly, our leaders in the world, they don't think more than for the next maximum the next election, or very often the next day, because they're all in mode of survival one way or another. And we're going to see that. We're going to see political unrest. We're going to see parties being thrown out, or leaders being thrown out before the end of their periods. That's also the typical for the end of an era.
Yes. Yeah. Well, like I do recall, I remember well a conversation that took place between myself and a Liberal politician going back about 12 months ago. And he was interested in knowing more about gold. And I said, before we get started, can I just ask you one question? He said, sure. And I said, what is your understanding of how the global monetary system functions? He said, I have no understanding at all. And he said, that's why I'm here. Please continue, Daryl. So it's just an indicator as to the leaders of this country, unfortunately, are so inept in real terms when it comes to an understanding of this subject. Incredible. So.
No, I'm just thinking about, we all talk about America and the real disaster there, and with the debt and the deficits, and the fact that, no one will ever be elected if he doesn't promise better times in the future. And of course, Trump now got in, and then he now realizes, and the people realizes that none of those promises will be fulfilled. Not even ending the war in Ukraine, as he said he would do on the first day. But, Europe is also in a mess, a total mess. Germany, the engine of Europe before, and the rest of Europe, they decided to outsource energy to other countries, especially to Russia. They outsourced manufacturing to China.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, the industrial base of Europe disappeared. And now Europe is in a total mess with, as I said, incredibly poor leaders. And what do leaders do when they're under political pressure in their home country? They start a war. And that's exactly what the European leaders are doing now. I mean, they don't even have their own armies. I mean, they outsource that to the US and with NATO. And now they're realizing that they have to spend up to 5% on defense, which that's what America told them to do. And Europe always follows America, of course, stupidly. And of course, nobody can afford 5%. But they're all promising that they're going to do that now. And they're putting together, NATO armies in Europe are nothing, basically. And they're now talking about putting together a European NATO force and potentially even sending soldiers to Ukraine. And that's, you take somebody like Starmer, he was worth nothing as an opposition leader. He would never, he's the UK leader. And nobody thought he would ever come in. But, the leaders are not voted in, they're voted out. And of course, Conservatives were voted out. And in comes Starmer as an extremely weak opposition leader. And now he is like a hero in Europe because UK has got the strongest army and sending more weapons to Ukraine than any other European countries, etc. And all of a sudden now he feels like a real hero among this extremely weak crowd of European leaders. And they love getting together and talking about war, which is disastrous. At the same time, everybody in Europe has joined NATO, of course, compared to 30 years ago. And so we have an extremely dangerous situation with weak leaders who really now wants to start a war or continue the war. The conflict between Ukraine and Russia would have been over a long time ago if the European leaders hadn't been in there, or the European countries giving money and weapons to Ukraine. So again, the consequence of this end of the monetary era and the weak political leadership leads to consequences what can be disastrous for the world. So as we know, we don't only have the economic crisis that is going to come upon us, but it also a high risk of war in some places and at some level. I don't ever see, like Americans worry about it often, I don't ever see a war in Western Europe. Russia is not going to go to Western Europe. They never have, and they never will. They're not interested in that area. But, you could have the continuation of the Ukrainian-Russian war, which is really started as an American-Russian war, and now Europe is getting involved also. That certainly can continue. But, of course, wars will not be boots on the ground anyway. Now, it will be drones, there will be missiles, there will be EMP attacks, or it will be cyber attacks, etc. So that's then another very dangerous period we're entering now, which is, as I said, part of the downturn. So, for our children and grandchildren, this is a very, very tough time to live. If you both have war in certain places plus economic misery, it can't get much worse than that.
No, I was going to say there, Egon, I'm watching a television program at the moment, and it's a Christian movie, or it's not a movie, it's a series, right, based on the life of Jesus Christ. And right at the moment, Jesus is about to, he's on the donkey, ready to go into the township, and the Pharisees out there don't want him, they don't want to believe in him, and all sorts of things. Now, this happened just over 2,000 years ago, and it's no different today. No different whatsoever today. They don't want to know the truth. And basically the truth is, you've got to believe in real leadership, you've got to believe in real money, otherwise things happen like you've just been talking about. So I'm not going to go say anything further than that, Darryl, but it's quite relevant to 2,000 years ago to today.